Welcome to the podcast, Reform Thinking. So, I was thinking about this earlier. Usually, when we talk about a command being given, there's a pretty strict expectation of cause and effect, you know?
Right, yeah. You expect a direct result.
Yeah, I mean, think about sitting in your car at an intersection. The traffic light turns red, you press the brake pedal, and, well, the car stops. The logic is totally linear.
You're moving from a state of action to a state of inaction simply because an authority told you to do so.
Precisely. And you would never look at a parked car with the engine completely turned off and just start screaming at it to stop.
No, I mean, that would be absurd. A command is given to alter a current state of affairs into a completely new state of affairs.
But then you open up ancient Hebrew poetry, and suddenly that entire logical traffic light concept is it's completely dismantled.
It really is. It gets thrown out the window.
Yeah. You find yourself looking at this vast cosmic landscape where commands are being shouted into the void at things that basically cannot possibly hear. Or, in some cases, commands are being yelled at beings who are already doing precisely what they are being told to do.
Right, which makes no sense on the surface.
It doesn't. Like, what happens when you stand on the edge of the ocean and scream at a literal hurricane to pay tribute to its maker?
Well, it creates a massive logical puzzle for us. I mean, it forces us to ask what the word command even means when the target is either unconscious matter or, say, a being that's literally incapable of disobedience.
And that brings us to the mission for today's show. We are taking a deep dive into an ancient song that does that very thing. We're looking at an excerpt from Charles Spurgeon's legendary commentary, The Treasury of David.
Specifically, his notes on Psalm 148.
Right. We're unpacking how a 19th century theologian reads this ancient text that basically demands praise from the entirety of creation, from the highest angels to the lowest sea monsters, and finally zooming in on humanity itself.
It's a huge undertaking. Spurgeon thought demanding praise from everything, from angels to insects, was actually the most rational thing a human could do.
Which sounds wild today. So we'll break down how this mandate cascades from the highest heavens, plunges into the terrifying depths of the oceans, and then, narrows in on us. Let's begin in the heights.
Let's do it.
The text starts by commanding the heavens, the angels, and the hosts to praise Jehovah. Now, Spurgeon uses some really striking imagery right out of the gate here.
He does, yeah. He has a very specific phrase.
He says the word praise acts like minute guns firing 9 times in 5 verses. He writes that the drum of the great king beats round the world with this one note, which is praise.
The minute gun imagery is it's a brilliant place to start.
Unpack that a bit for me, because a minute gun isn't something we see every day.
Right. Well, for context, a minute gun is a literal cannon fired at regular intervals, usually every 60 seconds. Historically, it was used to signal something of massive, inescapable significance, like a ship in distress or a royal funeral.
So it's not background noise.
Far from it. You cannot ignore a cannon going off every single minute. Spurgeon is showing us that the opening of this text is not some polite suggestion. It is a relentless, rhythmic, unavoidable mandate thundering across the universe.
Okay, I hear that. I get the cannon analogy. But I have a major point of pushback here.
Let's hear it.
Let's isolate the angels for a second. According to theology, angels are perfect beings. They are completely, flawlessly obedient to the will of their maker.
Yes, there is no rebellion in their current ranks.
So shouting at them to praise seems entirely redundant to me. It feels like, I don't know, going to a symphony, walking up to the conductor who is in the middle of flawlessly directing Beethoven's Ninth and demanding that he start playing music.
He's already doing it.
Right. Why command what is already happening in real time?
Well, the theologian Augustine actually recognized that exact logical puzzle.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he asked, if a heavenly being is already perfectly oriented toward its maker, why on earth would you shout instructions at it? And Augustine proposes a totally different way to understand the nature of the command.
Okay, how does he frame it?
He compares it to a master walking through a vast vineyard. So imagine this estate owner walking the rows, and he sees his laborers working diligently. They are doing an excellent job.
Sweating in the sun, doing the work.
Right, and the master calls out, work on, or keep at it.
Ah, okay, let me see if I'm tracking with this. You are saying the master is not scolding them for being lazy. He is not saying, hey, get to work.
Precisely. He is expressing his delight. It is a declaration of divine approbation. He is cheering them on and validating the action they are already performing.
So the command is just approval.
Yes. The command is actually an expression of pleasure in the service being rendered. When the psalmist tells the angels to praise, he is joining in the Maker's delight over their ongoing obedience.
I suppose that tracks. It's less of a get to work and more of a standing ovation for what is already happening. But that assumes the angels are just standing around singing all day, right? Which is kind of the cartoon image we have.
Which is a very common misconception. John Lorinus, another thinker from our source material today, makes a really beautiful observation about when angels actually do their best work.
They don't just stand on clouds with harps.
No, they don't just stand in a static circle holding harps. Lorinus notes that they worship best in their active, holy tasks.
What kind of tasks?
Well, he points out that they showed their highest devotion at the incarnation of Christ, singing their Gloria in Excelsis, and they showed it by ministering to him after his temptation in the wilderness.
Right, bringing him food, strengthening him.
Yeah, their action is their worship, and they have never stopped since the dawn of creation.
So bringing this down to you, the listener, right now, think about the implications of that for, say, a random Tuesday morning commute. What if your daily habit of gratitude or a quiet prayer you offer before a stressful meeting isn't some solitary, isolated chore?
That's a great way to look at it.
What if you were actually stepping into a cosmic chorus that is already happening? The angels are already singing. The heavenly hosts are already engaged in active tasks. You are simply being invited to join a symphony that has been playing since before the world began. You are never, ever singing alone.
That is a staggering thought. Really, just massive. But the song does not stay in the invisible realm of angels.
No, it moves down.
Yeah, the text shifts its attention to the visible architecture of the skies, the sun, the moon, the stars of light, the highest heavens, and even the mysterious waters above the firmament are drafted into this choir.
And this is where my logic completely breaks down again. I can wrap my head around conscious beings like angels following instructions. They have intellect. They have wills.
Sure.
But let's talk about rocks and gas. How can inanimate, unconscious objects like a giant ball of burning gas like a star or a floating rock like the moon actually render praise? We live in a modern era. We are taught to see the cosmos as a machine, devoid of personality.
A cold, silent universe.
Yes, a cold universe. How does a machine worship?
You are hitting on a fundamental tension here. The tension between modern mechanistic thinking and ancient theological poetry. Spurgeon's argument is that creation logically demands worship simply by functioning according to its design.
Or just doing its thing?
Exactly. To use your analogy of a machine honors its inventor simply by running flawlessly. But the text gives us a specific mechanism for how this happens. It introduces the concept of the divine decree. The text says, "He hath made a decree which shall not pass."
Wait, stop right there. What does a decree actually look like in the physical world? Because when I think of a decree, I think of an ancient king unrolling a piece of parchment and reading a law.
Well, drawing on notes from A.S. Aglund in the source material, what modern science calls the inviolability of natural order, so the laws of physics, gravity, thermodynamics, the psalmist recognizes as God's faithfulness.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. The planets do not trespass their limits. They follow their orbits with absolute precision. Their total submission to natural law is their homage. Their obedience is their praise.
They cannot deviate.
Right, they literally can, and that adherence to the decree of the Creator brings him glory.
That totally reframes the entire discipline of astronomy. You're saying that gravity itself is a form of nonverbal obedience.
Yes. And historically, thinkers have recognized this staggering beauty. Jesus, son of Sirach, called the sun the globe of beauty. We even see this bleeding into secular philosophy.
Who are we talking about there?
The Roman author Pliny, he referred to the sun as the mind and soul of the whole universe. Now think about that, a 19th century theologian quoting an ancient Roman pagan.
Why would he do that?
Because even the pagans recognized that the celestial bodies operate with such majestic precision that they seem to possess a mind of their own. The design is that obvious.
Spurgeon has this incredibly poetic description of the stars in the notes. I love this line. He says they are praise in a visible form twinkling to true music. It is as if light is basically a song glittering before the eye instead of resounding in the ear.
It alters how you look at the physical world. When you, the listener, step outside tonight and look up at the night sky, you are not looking at dead matter floating in a vacuum.
It's not just rocks and gas.
No, you are witnessing absolute, unbroken obedience to a divine decree. The silent spheres are actually screaming a perpetual hymn of submission.
But here is the friction for me. It is really easy to look at a pristine, orderly night sky and talk about perfect obedience. The stars stay in their lanes, the moon does its job. But when I look out my window down here on Earth, the world isn't pristine. It is chaotic.
It can be terrifying, honestly.
Yeah, we have hurricanes destroying homes. We have freezing polar ice caps where absolutely nothing survives. How does a theology of perfect cosmic praise survive contact with the sheer violence of planet Earth?
Well, that is the exact pivot the text makes next. The command to praise plummets from the skies down to the earth, and it goes straight into those chaotic, terrifying elements. It specifically calls upon dragons, all deeps, fire, hail, snow, vapors, and stormy winds, fulfilling his word.
Okay, wait, dragons. Are we talking about mythical, fire-breathing creatures here?
No, no. In the context of ancient Hebrew, dragons refers to massive sea monsters, the great leviathans of the deep.
Okay, whales, giant squid, that kind of thing.
Right. Think of creatures of dread swimming in the freezing flows and icebergs of polar waters. These are creatures that pay zero tribute to man.
They don't care about us at all?
They are entirely outside of human utility or control, yet the commentators note that they provide the base of the music of the psalm.
The bass note.
Yeah, they add a low, thunderous note of dread to the symphony, proving that even the most terrifying aspects of the natural world belong to the Creator.
I love that idea of a bass note of dread. It brings to mind an amazing thought from a Scottish thinker named James McCosh. This is regarding the weather, and it directly addresses the modern anxiety we have about natural disasters.
Oh, the peasant analogy.
Yes. McCosh says that a half-learned person might laugh at a simple peasant who believes that rain comes directly from God. The cynic will say, "No, you fool, it is just the product of air, water, and electricity. It is just atmospheric conditions."
Right, the scientific mechanics of it.
So let me ask you, according to McCosh, who is actually operating with more logic in this scenario, the peasant or the half-learned cynic?
Well, McCosh concludes that the peasant is vastly more logical.
Why is that?
Because the peasant recognizes the primary cause and the true actor behind the event. The cynic, the half-learned man, only sees the secondary causes. He only sees the machinery.
He misses the forest for the trees.
Exactly. McCosh likens it to receiving a beautiful, ingenious gift from a friend. And just as you start to feel gratitude toward your friend, someone interrupts to tell you that the gift was actually made by a machine in a factory.
Like that somehow negates the friend giving it to you.
Right. It misses the entire point of the gift. Recognizing the mechanism of the weather, the wind, the hail, the snow does not negate the author who designed the mechanism.
Speaking of snow, we have to talk about S.S. Mitchell's snowflake metaphor from the sources. I mean, this might be the most staggering visual in all of our notes today.
It is a beautiful image.
Mitchell describes standing on a riverbank in winter, watching tiny snowflakes fall into a rushing, hostile river. Visually, it looks like a complete waste. The snowflake just die uselessly in the dark water. They are swallowed up by an enemy that entirely ignores their existence.
It is a massive picture of vulnerability. The river represents raw, chaotic force, and the snowflake is fragile, silent, and delicate.
Yes. But Mitchell realizes that the snowflakes do not just die. They become incorporate with the river's being. They add to its volume. They achieve their end. They look like they are failing, but they are actually succeeding in altering the river.
And Mitchell uses that to illustrate how truth functions in a hostile world.
Unpack that a bit.
When the word of God falls upon seemingly indifferent, secular, or even hostile human hearts, it often looks like those snowflakes. It appears completely lost.
I think a lot of listeners can relate to that.
Oh, absolutely. You might feel this as a listener when you try to share your faith, or when you try to uphold a moral standard at your workplace. It seems to vanish without a trace into a restless, loud culture.
Like a snowflake hitting a dark river.
Right. But the text assures us that the truth, much like the storm and the snow, is fulfilling a divine command. It always achieves its intended end, even if the mechanism is completely hidden from our eyes.
I want to stick with that listener application for a second. Think about the stormy winds in your own life right now. Maybe it is an economic downturn, a health crisis, or a fractured relationship. The text specifically says the stormy winds are fulfilling his word.
Canon Liddon points that out, right?
Yes. Liddon points out that destructive forces are all under a divine decree. This includes destructive forces in nature, upheavals in society, and even your own inward spiritual doubts and personal storms. They are not random chaos.
They feel random, though.
They do, but they are secondary causes held firmly in the grip of the primary actor. They are fulfilling a purpose you might not yet see.
That offers massive stability. The storm is not outside of the command. And as the psalm continues, the mandate expands outward to cover the entire landscape and biosphere. It calls on mountains, hills, fruit trees, cedars, beasts, creeping things, and flying fowl.
Okay, here comes my skepticism again. Because it is one thing to say a hurricane is fulfilling a divine decree through physics, but it feels entirely unhinged to stand in a forest and shout at trees and bugs.
I know, it really does.
I picture the psalmist standing in the woods yelling at a caterpillar to give glory to its maker. Is he just wasting his breath?
It sounds totally absurd to modern ears. But John Everard provides 3 fascinating reasons for this exact behavior.
Let's hear them.
First, he says, a faithful preacher discharges his soul regardless of whether the audience can hear him. A true messenger speaks the truth outward, even if the auditors are asleep, or in this case, made of wood.
Okay, that makes sense for the speaker's own integrity. He has to say it to get it out. What is the second reason?
Second, he argues it is a brilliant psychological tactic designed to shame conscious humans into action.
Wait, unpack that for me. How does yelling at a bug shame a human being?
Well, think of the hierarchy of creation. You have an unconscious creeping thing or a wild beast. It is expected to glorify its maker simply by fulfilling its biological role. A bird flies, a tree grows fruit. They do this without thought.
Right, instinctively.
Yeah. So how much more obligation rests upon a rational, conscious human being? Everard suggests that by calling on the lower creatures, the psalmist is highlighting the embarrassing silence of the higher creatures. He is basically saying, if the bugs are singing their assigned part, why are you sitting there with your mouth closed?
Oof, that is a brutal reality check. And what was Everard's third reason?
His third reason is simply the fire of zeal. Absolute consuming passion makes a person speak impossible things. The desire for the Creator's glory becomes so overwhelming that the psalmist drafts the entire landscape into his choir because human voices are just not enough.
That makes me look at nature completely differently. Hugh Macmillan has this beautiful description of a pine forest in the notes. He says it acts as a natural cathedral.
I remember that, the harp strings analogy.
Yeah, he describes the winter snow acting as pure wreaths and the winds playing mournful music on its great harp strings. He says that in the dim shadows of the summer heat, the forest sings vespers. The very architecture of a forest is designed to pull the mind upward. It is not just timber waiting to be harvested. It is an active participant in worship.
And it goes all the way down to the microscopic level, too. The notes highlight the marvel of insects. There is a specific mention of the blue fly, which singeth in the window pane.
The blue fly.
Yeah. It also notes the incredible aerial adaptation of birds, which human balloonists and aviators have struggled to emulate for centuries. Every tiny adaptation, every microscopic joint is a biological wonder declaring the skill of the designer.
And here is the gut punch from the text. It makes a stark comparison. It says that base, songless humans are actually more insignificant than insects. Let that sink in for a second.
That's right.
If you refuse to acknowledge the Creator, the text considers the blue fly buzzing against your window pane to be living a more significant existence than you are. Why? Because the fly is at least fulfilling its created purpose. It is doing what it was designed to do.
It is a humbling reorientation of our place in the universe.
So for you, the listener, look at your local geography. Whether you live near the towering Alps, the rolling hills of a farming community, or just a small patch of grass in an urban park, that geography is a monument to the Creator. All geography is holy ground.
Which brings us to the next phase of the psalm, where the focus finally shifts to humanity. After covering the angels, the stars, the oceans, the weather, the trees, and the insects, the mandate reaches our own race. But it starts in a very specific place.
Where does it start?
It begins with the leaders.
Huh.
Kings of the earth, princes, judges, and all people.
Now, why does the psalmist single out politicians, kings, and judges first? If I were writing a universal anthem, I would start with the masses, the regular people, and then work my way up to the elites.
John Calvin provides the insight here. He points out that people in high stations, the kings, the judges, the executives, are very often blinded by the dazzling influence of their own status.
Case. Ego.
Exactly. When everyone answers to you, you begin to wrongly assume that the world was actually made for you. By mentioning them first, the text specifically reproves their ingratitude.
So it's an intervention for the ego.
Right. Calvin argues they are under vastly greater obligations to proclaim the goodness of the Maker because they have been elevated. They have been given authority, resources, and influence. Yet historically, they are often the slowest to acknowledge where that authority comes from. They treat their power as inherent rather than delegated.
Our sources offer a great, humbling reality check for anyone in leadership. It notes simply, and I quote, "Earthly kings and earthly judges will not be kings and judges long.
Very true.
Their titles are temporary, their authority is least, the crown is going to be passed to someone else, or the grave will claim them."
And we should not think this only applies to literal monarchs holding scepters.
Yeah.
Everyone has some sphere of influence.
I was just thinking that. You do not need a throne to have an ego problem. Think about modern equivalents. Maybe you are a CEO, a middle manager at work, a prominent voice on social media, or even the president of the local PTA.
Right, in those small circles, you are the king. You are the judge.
Exactly. This segment challenges you to check your pride. Any authority you possess is a delegated authority. Do not let the dazzling influence of your own small kingdom blind you to the universal king. The text is urging you to redirect any glory or respect you receive straight back to the source.
It strips away the illusion of absolute human control. And the structure of the psalm ensures no one is left out. Moving forward, the summons reaches across the generations. It calls upon both young men and maidens, old men and children.
I really want to dig into Thomas Cheshire's double caveat for the generations here. He breaks down the specific temptations that apply to different stages of life.
This is a great section.
For the youth, the young men and maidens, there is a massive warning against presumption. The temptation for a young person is to think, "I have plenty of time. I will take the swing of my youth now. I will focus on my career, my relationships, my ambitions, and I will get around to matters of theology and worship when I am old and have nothing better to do." Cheshire warns against delaying.
Presumption is the great enemy of youth. But on the other end of the spectrum, for the aged, the old men, there is a warning against despair.
Despair.
Yeah, the temptation for them is to think their time of usefulness has passed. They might feel their bodies breaking down, their influence waning, and therefore assume their voices do not matter in the grand chorus.
This is where George Lawson's commentary absolutely stopped me in my tracks. Lawson uses mathematical logic to address the elderly, and it is staggering.
The math is incredible.
He addresses an older person who might feel their time for praise is over. He says, consider this. An older person, say a 60-year-old, has lived roughly 22,000 days. Let us round it to 20,000 for easy math. 20,000 days and 20,000 nights.
The sheer volume of time is immense when you break it down like that.
Right. That means they have had 20,000 distinct opportunities to see the firmament show forth the handiwork of the Maker. 20,000 mornings where the sun rose, provided light, provided warmth, and sustained their life. 20,000 nights where the stars fulfilled their decree.
Day in and day out.
Lawson argues that if someone has lived 60 years completely ignoring God, the sheer unavoidable fact that they are still kept alive in a world overflowing with mercy is reason enough to finally offer praise. Every single breath at that age is an undeserved extension of grace.
It frames survival itself as a theological gift. If you have taken millions of breaths over 20,000 days, you have accumulated a massive debt of gratitude.
20,000 days. That framing changes everything. If you are 60 years old listening to this, you possess a massive archive of lived experience. You have seen the faithfulness of the Maker 20,000 times over. Your voice carries the weight of history.
And the text notes how beautiful it is when these generations interact. F.W. Robertson observes the beauty of friendships between the old and the young.
It's vital, isn't it?
Those cross-generational relationships are crucial. The old retain a sense of freshness and simplicity by interacting with the young. It keeps them from growing cynical. And the young exhibit thoughtfulness and wisdom by learning from the age. It is a mutually beneficial dynamic.
So to the listener, assess your current stage of life. If you are young, the time to establish your orientation toward the Creator is right now. Do not procrastinate. You are not guaranteed 20,000 days. And if you're older, do not surrender to despair. Your archive of lived experience qualifies you to teach the next generation. Every voice is required for this concert.
But then we hit the final crescendo of the psalm. And this is where the structure does something highly unexpected.
Oh, this part threw me.
Yeah, after spending the entire poem calling on the entire cosmos, the stars, the weather, the animals, and all the nations of the earth, the text suddenly narrows its focus to one highly specific group at the very end.
It exalts the horn of his people, the praise of all his saints, even the children of Israel, a people near unto him.
Right.
I really stumbled over this when I first read it. Why does a universal anthem suddenly become so incredibly narrow and specific? It feels like we zoomed all the way out to look at the galaxies and then suddenly put a microscope on one specific group of people.
This is a crucial theological pivot. The commentators J.J. Stewart Perrone and William de Burgh explain the mechanics of this beautifully. They point out a distinction between general and specific revelation.
Break that down for me.
Well, while the general glory of God is written across the visible creation, the stars, the mountains, the oceans, that only shows his immense power and his Godhead, it tells you there is a massive intellect behind the universe.
Right. Looking at the Milky Way tells me the Creator is huge, but it doesn't tell me if he knows my name.
Precisely. The specific, saving revelation of his character, his mercy, and his covenant love was given exclusively to his elect people. The creator of the universe is not just a distant force. He is specifically God to his people. He is the maker of all, but he is the father to a specific few.
James Smith breaks down what it means to be a people near unto him. I want to walk through his list because it makes this highly personal. Smith says they are near in relation as children.
Right, an adopted family.
They are near in affection, loved with an everlasting love. They're near in union, functioning like members of a body. Near in fellowship, walking together in daily life.
Constant communion.
Yeah, near in attention, being the objects of his daily, hourly care. And finally, soon to be near in locality, sharing the same dwelling place.
And the text says, he exalteth the horn of this people. In ancient imagery, the horn represents strength, dignity, and victory.
Like an animal's horn.
Yeah. When his people are brought low, he raises up a horn for them by sending them a deliverer. When they are in the middle of a conflict, he gives them courage. He does not just demand praise from a distance while letting them suffer. He actively rescues and strengthens those who belong to him.
That is the ultimate comfort for you, the listener. Let us tie these grand cosmic themes right back to your daily life. We started with the terrifying scale of the universe. The God who commands the freezing depths of the ocean, who dictates the violent trajectories of the stormy winds, and who sustains the burning stars of the highest heavens by a decree that cannot be broken. Wait, I need to restart that. The exact same God who sustains the stars is the one who offers intimate, tender, highly specific care to you as an individual.
That's the core truth right there.
You are not lost in the sheer scale of the cosmos. If you are his, you are near unto him.
It bridges the gap between the infinite and the intimate. The physical architecture of the entire universe is held together by the same hands that hold his people.
So we have tracked this mandate from the angels down to the oceans, from the kings down to the children, and finally to the saints. And the text bounds this entire song with hallelujahs. It starts with praise ye the Lord, and it ends with praise ye the Lord.
Barton Bouchier asks a fascinating question in the notes about this universal anthem.
What does he ask?
He asks if this is just the psalmist's longing, a poetic wish that will never actually happen in reality, or if it is a literal prediction of a coming day when every atom in the universe will consciously vibrate with praise.
It forces us to confront our own position in that universal choir.
It really does.
Right. And it brings us back to where we started. Remember our orchestra from the beginning of the show? The flawless musicians, the conductor giving his joyful command to work on. I wanted to leave you with a final thought to mull over. If all of creation, from the highest star burning in the blackness of space to the lowest ocean depth, from the ancient cedar tree to the tiny blue fly buzzing against your window pane, if all of it is already perfectly obedient, functioning exactly as designed, offering its silent, unceasing praise to the Creator, what if the only discordant, out-of-tune note in the entire universe is human silence?
A sobering thought.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. As you go about your week, we encourage you to listen to the silent symphony of creation playing all around you and make sure you add your voice to the song.